of a free man, and to characterize them as just only slaves is misguided, I think. And the issue of the context in which a culture is judged is very important, because the way I see it, the founding fathers got the foot in the door and gave us the formula for success, which is to
Right.
protect the individual rights of all people.
Based on
Of all,
principle of
right.
self-governance, based on the principle of self-governance, that's very important to understand.
So, by limiting the proper function of the government to protecting the individual rights of the citizens, this idea was only applied to some citizens, but clearly, with a little bit of thought, it was expanded to people of different color, people of different gender. And so you don't start out having a perfect system,
Right.
but you can start out with the right idea.
And I think that all has to do with their understanding of history and the principle of liberty. They knew that liberty is contagious. If someone in a society, in a society of self-governance, where people actually have control, because you're right, to a certain extent, Washington and Jefferson and Madison, before our independence, they were not free men. They were subjects of a king, whose freedom was limited then by their constitutional documents, but not so much that the king just couldn't write an edict to overdo them. And so creating a situation where they're no longer a monarchy, but a constitutional republic, made a fertile ground for people to have a liberty, to see a liberty that they wanted, and have the peaceful means to achieve it. In British history, if you wanted more liberty from the government, you had to pick up the sword to get it. You had to hold the sword to the king's throat, make him agree to let you have more liberty. And that was the future they were trying to protect their posterity from. Will give you a way to come together peacefully as a people, will give you the opportunity of self-governance so that you can ensure that this is a land where all are free. I think the greatest gift they gave us was not the Constitution, but was the opportunity to self-govern. I think the biggest condemnation on America today is our refusal to self-govern.
Well, I think you're doing a great job explaining all these things. One other thing that you mentioned in your question and answer period was the issue of the Civil War. I've always viewed the Civil War as the biggest mistake in history, because it just devastated the country. And really unnecessary, because eventually people saw the light about slavery. And there's no reason to believe that the southern states wouldn't have reconsidered, and like the rest of the world did,
Well,
that had slaves.
historically speaking, the southern states, even as their whole body, were not all imposing slavery. So you had lots of free people in the southern states. So to say that just because they were a southern state, they were the entire state was into slavery, the freedom was spreading even there. And it was the cultural shift that was necessary to create this in its happening. And that cultural shift would have never happened without our constitutional republic and the foundation of liberty. The Civil War is a very complex thing. It's not something that you can easily slip into a one box or another. In the very least, it was two wars being fought at the same time. Because you do have Americans who believed with all their heart that they were fighting to end slavery. And you can't deny that in the human process. But we also have to understand there was great manipulation going on by the federal government in the Civil War to create a situation where the federal government would end up as a supreme government over the states, which is completely antithetical to the creation of our constitutional republic.
Right. It undermines the fundamental principle on which the colonies formed the Union, and to say that to preserve the Union is worth killing millions of people, and just destroying the country is ridiculous, right? I mean, if a state wants to secede, they should have the right to secede.
Oh, absolutely.
Why are you going to go to war over something like that? If later they want to come back into the Union and they're accepted, fine. we don't want to use force to make people do things. We want people to do them based on consent. And that is the essence of freedom, where people exercise their own judgment and decide what they think's in their self-interest. And as a state of the Union, they can do it collectively as well.
And I think that, once the driving force is the lack of education about the Constitution. The Constitution is a legal document. It's legally described by the drafters as a compact, which is a contractual agreement between the sovereign governments of the states. There is no such thing as in a common law culture as a contract that never ends. There's no such thing in a common law society of a contract that once breached cannot be escaped. And for the